Welcome to How to Be a Builder 101. Before you start building, there are a few things you need to know. To be a good builder in your area, you have to have some special education and training as a builder. You have to know how to put different pieces together in order to make something that is functional and useful. Something that serves a particular purpose in the community where you're building. You have to have a working knowledge of your materials and how they will fare in the environment. You need to know how your materials will hold up against the natural elements, being aware of any unusual or extreme natural phenomena that occur in the area you're building, as well as any that may be occurring while you build. You have to know how all of the pieces will hold together to serve their unified purpose, making sure that your master plan is workable. You also have to know how to make the necessary building materials serve their purpose, while still creating some curb appeal. You also need to know that different materials are required to construct different buildings. If you were planning to build a tall skyscraper in downtown Manhattan, you'd probably need to start with a sturdy steel frame. Whereas if you were building a pyramid in ancient Egypt, you would have needed truckloads of limestone blocks for starters. Now, let's mix this up. You're no longer a builder. You are now a rhetorician. A speaker, writer, public figure, or prominent communicator of some sort. The rhetoric you are producing has salience and exigence, meaning that it generally carries importance and relevance to current events, and has the power to affect perception, opinion, and the resulting actions of your audience members. Creating good rhetoric is a lot like constructing a building that efficiently serves its purpose. So, how does one construct good rhetoric?
Well, just as good food, good movies, and good music take completely different and even conflicting forms in varying cultures and geographic areas of the world, good rhetoric also takes on different meanings. It may not be surprising to learn that different cultures have different rhetorical practices, or that communication in foreign countries often operates under what may seem to others as an offbeat or peculiar set of standards. It is also no surprise that in the absence of a universal standard for, quote, good rhetoric, members of every culture have a self-centered ecology of understanding, which allows them to operate rhetorically in their own social, cultural, historical, and geographical contexts. The real question is, what happens when we have to interact with each other, or when we have to develop an understanding of one another's rhetorical practices? How do we go about observing and analyzing foreign rhetorical practices across social, cultural, national borders, without imposing our own culturally embedded framework onto people who create, use, and understand rhetoric differently? Is a completely unbiased transnational approach to rhetoric even possible?
Theorist Lu Ming Mao points out that in order to develop an understanding of the rhetorical practices of another culture, it's important to take an analytical position founded on the quest to uncover facts of usage, rather than facts of essence. This is particularly important when coming from a Western Aristotelian rhetorical background, in which canonization, definitions, and proper forms are often sought and prized more than obtaining a working knowledge. If you're a builder and you intend to construct a working piece of architecture, you have to know what you're working with. In the case that you're learning about or learning to use a new material, you may not have to have an exhaustive understanding of its chemical makeup or the history of everything it's ever been used for, but you do need to know how it works and what it does. If you know the purposes and uses of one material, as well as how it works in combination with a set of other materials, you're already on your way to understanding the resulting structures that they're used to create. But this begs the question, how much is too much? Granted, it is crucial to take in major points regarding the related history, cultural values held by the majority, past developments that have led to the current state of rhetoric in a given culture or geographic region, and anything else that might affect the way that rhetoric is used and understood therein. For example, how much does a college student in China who is attempting to understand and analyze the rhetoric of a prominent Australian politician need to contextualize in order to grasp a working knowledge of the rhetoric he or she is studying? You have the detailed nuances of Australian culture, including freedoms of religion in the early 2000s, Australian drought, replacement of fossil fuels with natural power, head of state, how to pull the general public out of a stagnant state, judiciary branch, legislative branch known as the Parliament. However, this forces us to ask once again, how much is too much? I suspect you're anticipating a hard and fast answer. Well, truth be told, no such rule exists. While compiling context is always necessary for observing and analyzing rhetoric cross-culturally and transnationally, the amount of context necessary to give you a grasp on how a certain form of rhetoric works and how it is used will vary by situation, culture, and the complexity of the particular bits and pieces of rhetoric that you're looking at. Now, let's be clear. Lu Ming Mao's frustration is not with Western thought, and Western thought in and of itself is not bad. Like people groups in urban China, sub-Saharan Africa, Siberia, or anywhere else, our self-centered ecology of rhetorical understanding allows us to communicate and operate in our own rhetorical system, which is as much a result of history, social development, cultural values, and rhetorical tradition as anyone else's would be, and is just as legitimate. However, the problem in the Western case, which of course could easily occur in practitioners of any other set of communicative methods, is that elements of our own ecology have become a standard to which other rhetorical practices are often held. Objectivity is often thrown off and replaced with a compulsion to satisfy that old dried-out triad of ethos, logos, and pathos, along with other elements of Aristotelian thought. Now, to this dilemma there is an answer, and a rather simple one at that. Avoid cultural hegemony. Well, for starters, what is hegemony, and how does one avoid it? In a nutshell, hegemony is assumed dominance of, or preference for, one group over another. In the case of transnational rhetoric, hegemony looks like the choice to view one set of communicative practices as superior to another. According to theorist Gloria Anzaldúa, avoidance of cultural hegemony when creating a transnational approach to rhetoric can move Western thinkers, and thinkers of any cultural background, away from set patterns and goals and toward a more wholesome perspective, one that includes rather than excludes. So there you have it. While still maintaining knowledge and proficiency in one's own set of culturally based rhetorical practices within their respective environment, it is still possible to approach rhetoric beyond other social, cultural, and national borders, with a necessary level of objectivity that frees other sets of communication practices from scrutiny under a rhetorical framework to which they do not belong. By learning to avoid cultural hegemony, embracing incongruities, and actively creating ecologies of historicity, specificity, and incongruity, we may yet embrace true objectivity and learn to grasp transnational rhetoric in a new way.